Hello everyone, and good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am Sydney McKinney, the Executive Director of the National Black Women's Justice Institute. For those of you who are new to the organization, the National Black Women's Justice Institute, or NBWJI for short, we are a research institution that works to elevate and educate the public about innovative community-led solutions to address the criminalization of Black women and girls. We aim to dismantle the racist and sexist paradigm on which the U.S. criminal legal system was founded and built, and build in its place pathways to opportunity and healing. We envision a society that respects, values, and honors the humanity of Black women and girls, takes accountability for the harm it has inflicted, and recognizes that real justice is healing. Earlier this year, NBWJI started a virtual book club focusing on books by Black women that show the real impact of criminalizing, punishing, and incarcerating Black women and girls. Our second book in our series for this book club is A Little Piece of Light, which is an inspiring memoir by Donna Hylton. It not only is deeply personal, but it illuminates how sexual violence, abuse, and trauma punctuate the lives of women who are incarcerated, and more importantly, shows us what women can accomplish when supported, cared for, and loved. So tonight, we are so fortunate to be in conversation with Donna about this extraordinary book. Donna Hylton is an activist and author who advocates for the rights and well-being of women and girls who have been impacted by intersectional trauma, such as violence, sexual abuse and assault, domestic violence, police brutality, and incarceration. She is an outspoken proponent of the need to incorporate harm reduction into our policies for addressing societal and justice issues within a humane framework. Ms. Hylton's advocacy includes contributing to legislation that seeks to reverse injustice and improve the lives of impacted people, such as the landmark Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act, DVSJA, the New York State Less is More bill, which just passed, congratulations, hashtag Close Rikers campaign, and she is a leading voice in the bail reform movement. Donna also sits on the Brooklyn Bail Fund Board of Directors. She is also a member of the advisory board for Sankofa, the progressive organization founded by actor and activist Harry Belafonte. Born in Jamaica, Donna was human trafficked in the United States in an illegal adoption, which led to the trauma and abuse she experienced, unabated throughout her childhood and early adult life. In desperation to escape unfathomable circumstances, her path took a devastating turn and led her to incarceration at age 20 for 27 years. Documented in her well-received 2018 memoir, A Little Piece of Light, Donna's journey encompasses the depths of despair and the heights of spiritual and intellectual enlightenment. While imprisoned, she understood, claimed, lived, and grew in her truth as a survivor of abject trauma, earned 3 college degrees, an associate's and a bachelor's degree in behavioral science, and a master's in English literature, and began her activism. It is this complex experience that Donna draws upon in her direct work with women and girls. So we are so excited to have Donna here. And I just want to say, before we jump into the questions with her, I just want to let everyone know that we are monitoring the Q&A function. And so you should feel free to put your questions into the Q&A function, and we will try and incorporate those in real time into our conversation. If they are not addressed, we will be sure to follow up with you at the end. So please follow up with us if we don't get to anything that you've asked. So that's all of the scene setting. Donna, I just want to say it is an honor to be with you tonight. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for sharing your story. What inspired you to write A Little Piece of Light? After not being believed by the school social worker when you reported the sexual abuse that you were experiencing at home, and when you testified in court and that not being believed, and also when you tried to report C.O. Brown for the first time, you received all of these messages around how telling your truth, either it won't be heard or there are repercussions. And I want to know how you overcame that to get to this point where you wrote such a beautiful and moving memoir.
Thank you, Sydney, for that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I just feel honored to be here with you all tonight, telling my truth and the truth of so many other women and girls, right, in the world. So I was, I was an adolescent when I got caught up in the crime that I was caught up in and couldn't get out of, and so became an unwilling accessory, right? And people don't understand how much trauma can lay the groundwork for incarceration and just getting caught up and not, especially as a child. People really think that children are able to respond as adults and to navigate themselves through things in an adult way. We give so much on children, and we put so much on Black children, especially Black girl children, Black and brown girl children. And so because of that, all the adults, basically majority of the adults in my life as a child, doing the same thing. If they were perpetuating the abuse, they were doing that as well, like not responding like I was supposed to take care. I didn't know what to do. I was a kid. So as children, we start owning stuff and believing everything that's ever happened to us is our fault. And the sun doesn't shine, it's my fault. If the clouds are, it's my fault. If something's wrong in the household, it's my fault. So it must be my fault why people are hurting me or people are doing the things that they are doing to me. So you start thinking it's just you. So you isolate yourself in trauma because that's what we do as children. We own it. We own it. And so when I got caught up, I thought I was still a kid, that everything was my fault, that I was the only one, that nothing else, it was just everything that was wrong in the world I was the reason. So something's wrong with me. And I just thought it was just me. And then I went into the prison system. And I met hundreds of other young women and women who had very similar journeys, stories, experiences, trauma as myself. And throughout that 27 years, that process, I realized something was wrong with us as a people, that was okay. That we had prisons, because I knew it wasn't just Bedford. I knew it wasn't just because I was just in a county on Rikers Island where not everyone went to Bedford, came upstate, whatever. So it's all over. So it was then that I vowed, like, I have to do something. Something has to give here. Something has to change. But first I had to look at self and start that healing forgiveness process, because healing can only happen with forgiveness. And the first person you have to forgive is self. So there were layers of that. And throughout the years, as I continued to hear stories and we developed the programs, we developed like one of the most important programs to me, especially in my walk as a trauma impacted little girl and young woman, was the family violence program, which came out of a series of hearings that happened before I got to Bedford. And that triggered and led to the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act. We'll say DVSJA from now on, it's very long. And so when I came out, I wasn't too sure what it was I was going to do. But I didn't know I was released to do something. I just knew that the world had to know who we incarcerate and why, and how we don't help. Because it takes a village, and we're all that village. I don't care the color of your skin. I don't care what you practice, what you don't practice, what you believe, what you don't believe, who you love, what you love. It doesn't matter. It's a village. We're all that community. So, and it was with the help of the support that I had around me that allowed me to, okay, I'm going to share out here like I did inside. And I had to bring their stories. I had to bring the stories of the women that society chose to silence and ignore and not listen to. Because the only way we're going to change and we're going to do anything to be better human beings overall is to become uncomfortable with the stuff we've been comfortable with. And we've all been comfortable with stuff that we should not be comfortable with. We should never be comfortable with a child going to bed hungry. We should never be comfortable with a child or anyone not getting education, quality education. We should never be comfortable with poverty. We should never be comfortable with homelessness. We should never be comfortable with trauma and harm and pain and hurt. We should never be comfortable with these things. It's not something, these things are not, and many more that I have not named, but these are not things that we like, okay, it's this, but that's over there. So I'm not going to talk about it because it's taboo, or we don't talk about that. Or, we're not going to work on that because no. This is all BS if we don't understand that we have to look at the root causes of stuff. And 99.99999% of the time, it is harm, trauma, abuse, pain, violence, all these things that predicate everything else.
It is so true what you have just said, and it is so kind of confusing to me how our criminal legal system hasn't caught up with this understanding of thinking about root causes, and instead really just responds and punishes instead of understanding that this particular thing that happened had all these other factors that led to it. And, for me, the thing, in your book, Eve Ensler wrote the foreword, and she wrote, like, too often by the time a woman commits a crime, her only goal has been survival.
Yep.
And your story tells us that. The story of every other woman who's incarcerated tells us that. We spoke to Beth Ritchie, and she said she has not met a woman who is incarcerated who hasn't experienced some form of trauma or violence in her life. So this is well known and understood.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we don't have a lot of laws on the books that acknowledge or understand that. We have the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act, the acronym is actually harder for me than the actual name. But we have that law, which is an excellent landmark legislation that allows for the mitigating factors, a woman or a person's experience of DV, intimate partner violence, or family violence to be brought in as mitigating factors to be considered as part of their sentencing. And it's monumental. And it's working in New York, but it could be working better. Okay. But New York is one of only a few states that has legislation that's kind of really jumped on board and come on board and understanding that. And so, I guess my question to you is, why do we think that is? Like, why is it that the legal system hasn't caught up with what we all know, what the data shows us is a real life factor and a driving factor?
Yeah.
It's a big question.
Yeah, well, it is. And there's not a simple solution or answer, but I will say this, and if anyone knows me, I am very transparent and honest and authentic to this because people's lives are at stake. I don't want anybody else to ever get caught up into a situation like I got caught up in, that a human being's life was taken, any more harm, right? So this is serious for me and my team, who happens to be here as well. I think we should question why we have certain states within our union that would want to force a woman, after she's had an abortion, for whatever her reasons are, to force her to have a funeral, memorial for fetus, which, you know, whatever people's choices are, their choices are, but to continue to perpetuate that. We should question why we have certain states in our union that think that poverty is okay and that they don't see it as violent. We should question states that continue to perpetuate harm by not valuing women in a way that's respectful and dignified. The prisons are only a microcosm of what happens on the macro level, which means our larger society, right? So if we continue to cause harm out here, and all we want to do to those that we say, well, these are the consequences. And prison and incarceration and detention and all these things, cremation, continue to be the response. We're going to continue to do the same things. We're going to have a criminal legal system, which a lot of us like to call it, that perpetuates this harm because no one is saying it's wrong. And those that we give our backing to when we vote, when we put people in place to be our voice, to speak up and to fight for us and to get the things that we need. And we continue to give them the power or not check that. That power goes unchecked. And we make people think that it's okay to treat certain sects of people in certain ways. What is our system saying? They're run by the same people. We got to start looking in the mirror. I got to start looking at self first and really looking at myself and being honest with myself and say, I don't like this done to me. So if I don't like this done to me, why am I okay with it being done to someone else? And if I know that something is wrong, if I'm old enough or knowledgeable enough to understand that something is wrong, why am I not going to speak up when I know it is wrong? Why am I going to allow it to continue? So the only way, again, I go back to that, the only way us as a society, as a people, as a race of human beings, is going to change anything is by first recognizing self, understanding our role in things, and what we do to perpetuate harm, and what we do to not, or can do to not perpetuate harm. So that's the answer I can give, because there are no clear-cut answers, because it starts with individuals. We have people running our country. Let's be very honest here, people. We have people who are in power and play, running certain parts of our government, our country, our cities, municipalities, whatever, that think that it is okay for some people to have and some people to have not, for some people to be hurt and some people not to be hurt, for some people to prosper and some people to grovel, for some people to be incarcerated and some people to get away with murder. Period.
Thank you. Uh, it's interesting because your response is really similar to your response to the first question, right? Like, we have to become uncomfortable with those things that we were once comfortable with, right? Those things that are harmful, those things that are problems, those things that perpetuate the system in the way that it exists today. And until we take a look, right, like you said, it's going to perpetuate. And I think that's really important as part of a broader conversation about, you know, criminal justice, criminal legal reform, or transforming the criminal legal system, is that, you know, people are always thinking about changing the laws and changing the conditions within prisons and jails, but you're saying, and is I think very obvious to many folks, but not everyone, that there's a problem in our society as a whole, right? Like, it's just a reflection. It's like holding up a mirror, and too often people are not engaging in these conversations around mass incarceration, or transforming or reforming the system in that way. Thinking about the advocacy and the work that you did with the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act, how do we encourage more advocacy for legislation like this really landmark piece of legislation in New York? How do we get this passed in other places? Like, what do you recommend? Because it's so important, right? Like, that people, that lawyers, that judges know and understand that these experiences of violence that happen in a person's life impact why they are in front of them today. And you know, lawyers have difficulty with it, judges have difficulty with it, but states aren't taking it up. And how do we encourage more states and lawyers to be advocating it and to be doing this work? And even, I mean, even in your case, which is, you know, predates the DVSJA, was it Sister Eleanor? Sister Eleanor, I think.
Sister Mary Nerdy.
Yeah, so, but she was saying she tried to get your lawyer to actually take into account your experience at your trial. And so that even predates.
Oh, Sister Eleanor here, yes.
Yeah. The Sister Eleanor was trying to get your lawyer, your defense attorney, to take up those issues. And it sounded like there was a little like, I'm not sure, but she managed to convince him. That's conversation, that issue is still happening today, despite what we know. So what's the kind of advocacy that we can do so more people understand?
Well, again, you know, it's always gonna go back to us, the individual and the community, right? So we're a group of organizers here at Little Piece of Light. That's part of the big work that we do. So as organizers, we go out there and we engage the community and find out what their issues are, what's important to them, what's not important to them, whatever. We gauge the temperature within the community, the individuals, right? And that's how legislation is created. To be clear, policy is not difficult at all. You have a problem within your community, you want to address it, let's write some policy, try to get some changes happen. That's as simple as that. Now, the details might be a little bit tricky, but it's as simple as that. So with that being said, we as individuals, whatever state you're in, need to start speaking out. Call your local council person, district leader, alderman, senator, local senators, assembly, whatever they're called. Let them know you're not okay. You're not okay that we don't have any systems in place to address harm. We can't continue to repeat the rhetoric that public safety is only premised in one thing. And that the end all of that is prison or any kind of incarceration or detention. That's nonsense. That's not public safety. Because hello, folks, I came out after 27 years. So if I was really a monster and a murderer and all this other stuff that people say that I am, hey, hi, neighbor. So the only way we're going to make any changes respectively in our communities, wherever we are, is to start speaking up. Reach like minds. Don't worry about the people that you have to spend 50 hours to convince. If it's just one other person with you, There you go. Or if it's just you, use your voice. It is the strongest thing that you have. It is yours. And one thing that I learned, and I go back and I tell the little Donna, your voice matters. So speak up. Something is wrong, speak up and say it's wrong. If we have voted you in to represent us and to create change within our neighborhoods, within our people, our communities, then tell them if they're not doing that. Just tell them, do something. Just don't, oh, well, you know, that's really, don't talk, no. Put that action, put the word action into physical movement action. And you don't have to do much. When you hear someone talking about something and you know what's wrong, it doesn't sound right. And it's like, that's not nice. You know, that commercial, I think it's all over the country. I've been across the country now. You see something, say something. If you see something, say something, and oftentimes do something. But we can't look to those that we put in leadership positions to do that work we've put them in there to do if we are not able and we don't see ourselves as being the checks and balances. There are no checks and balance for a whole lot of folks and things. And it's going to take us to do that. And my colleague Nancy says, silence is a crime. Yes, it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy, too. I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit more about the activism and organizing that you've been doing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what have been in recent days, months, years, the legislation that you've been working on most actively? I know that you recently had a very exciting win, and so I would love for you to tell everyone about that really exciting win that you've had with Less is More, as well as anything else that you're working on that we need to know.
So we would love to see, along with the DVSJA, Less is More. This is Less is More New York, right? I'll get into it. Less is More New York, but I would love to see a Less is More California, Less is More Wisconsin, a Less is More Illinois, a Less is More Texas, Less is More Georgia, a Less is More in all, how many states we have now? I get confused because it's always an issue fighting for statehood here. So, but it would be great to see that. And the reason why, for those of you who don't know, Less is More is legislation that A Little Piece of Light was instrumental in drafting and leading, co-leading, along with our partners at Catal Center for Equity, Health, and Justice, and Unchained. And so we finally got it passed through after 3 years of pushing for it, fighting for it, to pass both our state Senate and Assembly. And that legislation will stop the reincarceration of people who are not committing crimes. So there's all this fear talk, there's always fear and public safety stuff, and oh my God, they're out. They're going to come and murder you and rape you and this and that while you're, I mean, all these things. So I'd just like to say, my name is Donna Hylton. I'm formerly known as inmate 86G0206. I spent 27 years in New York State's maximum security prison for women. I was convicted of the crimes of kidnapping and murder. And I am out now, not only, and I'm an advocate, activist, an author, but I also am the president and CEO of A Little Piece of Light, an organization, a national organization that is working to end the incarceration of women and girls and to change the criminal legal system, dismantle it at best. So I'm not out here, neither is my team, 99% who are formerly incarcerated as well, system impacted as well. We're not out here trying to harm you. We are out here just like you, as your neighbor, to say that we too want to invest in public safety, but we know how to do it because we know what wasn't done for us. So you can't keep spewing the rhetoric that is people like me who's employing people. We're doing this work to make things better, the world better, our immediate world better. And you would want to incarcerate me because I missed the curfew. Oh my God, I didn't make it home at 9 o'clock. I missed it, or 8 o'clock. Some people have it at 7 o'clock. But then you want me to work. And if I don't make it home in New York City, anyone knows New York City and the transportation here, that's suspect. You can get stuck in a tunnel for a half hour. So what does that mean? I go back to prison because I didn't make it home from work? And you were outside waiting, you were trying to see if I was home, but I'm also working, or I might be going to school, or I'm missing an appointment because I had to choose between going to parole so that you could see me, even though you can see me anytime, right? So you can see me, or don't go to work and lose my job. So we have to walk on eggshells and navigate that system that after doing time, now we have to still do this stuff, but you're telling us and demanding of us that we become productive, law-abiding citizens, but mostly every step we make or take, you try to set us up to fail. Please don't believe that we're monsters. Vast majority of us are not. We're regular, normal human beings, and it's circumstantial, it's situational why we were in prison. If you would have listened to the 12-year-old, that when she went to school, after she realized, oh my God, I can go to the school counselor and tell and let them know what's going on, and that's gonna take away the pain and the hurt, because I didn't know what else to call it. And all I was going there for was maybe she'd tell my now adoptive mother, to just give me a key so I can lock out the pain. That was my solution as a child. Give me a key and it will all go away. It was bigger than that. So if you continue to see me as less than or not important, then we'll continue these things. So that's why we fight and we create these legislations to attack the rhetoric, the nonsense that you all are told. I'm not saying people don't do bad things, and I'm not saying that some people need some time out, absolutely. You know why? Because we have not addressed mental health in the way it can be addressed. We have not addressed poverty. Poverty is violence. We have not addressed the harm that's caused in our neighborhood because we don't have enough medical support. People have not grown up and had a doctor that probably helped them come into this world, and now they're 20 years old and they still have that doctor, and the doctor knows everything that's going on in that child, that individual's life. And so they can they know how to talk to them. Why are we afraid of doctors? Because we didn't have them to begin with. That's public safety. We take for granted what people have and what they don't have. Don't say to a person, oh, but you could have done this, you could have done that. You do not know what a person's circumstance or situation is, and you don't understand and don't know their mindset. And how dare us tell a child, give a child the burden that an adult can't even manage. How dare us?
I'm sure you see this, but people are loving what you just said. Speak, say that, yes, lots of hand claps. And one that I loved, some women fear the fire, some women simply become it. So thank you so much for what you just shared with us. There's so much that you just said that I want to ask you about. One thing that I feel like comes up so much, and I just want to talk to you about this, is like the importance of family and connection for women who are incarcerated and returning home. In A Little Piece of Light, one of the things that you didn't have before going to Bedford was, a really strong supportive network of people in your life who cared for you. And it was at Bedford that you found and you were able to choose your family. And that was so important as part of your transformation into this incredibly powerful woman that we see today, or the revealing of this incredibly powerful woman that we see today, because she was always there. As well as like part of what really, I think, helped you was that reconnection with your daughter that you were able to establish while you were at Bedford Hills. And so I'm wondering if you could just talk to us about why it is important for us to be advocating for family connection for folks who are incarcerated, because so often incarceration is tearing apart families. People don't get to see their loved ones, and I think you also say this so beautifully in the book, that you wanted to be there to take care of and protect your daughter, and like the stress and strain that placed on you, as well as just not being able to be there, and how that impacted you. I just don't think when courts and judges are making these decisions about ending parental rights of like folks who are incarcerated, they're taking into account the kind of harm that it causes, not to the person who is in prison, but also to the child and the family.
There's a lot in there. So I'll start with this. I was a child with a child, right? There's a lot of us, a lot of us in this world, unfortunately. Children should never be having children, period. But it happens. For Black and brown women, children, it happens a lot. For the 2.3 million people that we have that are incarcerated, we don't have them incarcerated, that are incarcerated, right? Vast majority are parent. The overwhelming majority of women that are incarcerated are mothers. Fathers, mothers. So when we tear apart a family, regardless of what happened, if our response is to continue to tear apart a family, tear a mother away from her children, tear that community up, because once you do that, the community is torn apart. Then we're going to see this cycle continue. No one addressed, not just me as a child, but any other child that had a child, or adult that had a child, in a way that would have brought more healing, more opportunity for that bond, that relationship. We continue to do that, we're going to continue to have the same thing, as I said. We have, for every, I'm trying to remember the stats right now, but for the most part, one in every six or 10 children has an incarcerated parent in this country. Do the math. Says a lot, or has the system impacted parent, right? So they themselves are impacted. And again, something is wrong there. Something is wrong there. And if we can't find value in a human being to come in and to say, okay, you might of course harm, but how do we as a system find a way to bring some healing, to bring something into the space instead of incarceration, detention, or what the like? How do we think that we can address the issues? And one thing that I've been having a conversation about lately is, Black folks, especially our Black men, called deadbeat dads, no good parents. But let's be very clear, folks. No disrespect to our white counterparts on this call, but let's be very, very clear. Very, very clear. You don't have children, so many children looking like me in this country if we didn't already have some trauma that was forced on us when our people were enslaved. So to say that a race or group of a group of people don't know how to parent, are deadbeat, are no good, or whatever, and we have not addressed the trauma, the generational trauma, then what are we doing? I am a product of that, and I don't come from this country. But I look around and I see a whole lot. So don't point a finger at my people, at those that have the least amount of resources, opportunities, and the like, and say that we're bad, we're this, we're that, when you have not put into place or allowed us to continue the practice, to continue that bond, that relationship, no matter what. I can't tell you how quickly the systems responds to when I was detained before I was even sentenced. Well, you can't see your child because that was the response. Automatically, you can't see your child, we're taking your child. I thought I was doing the right thing by the way in which I addressed it because I didn't have anybody, an adult, to really tell me how to do it. So no matter what, I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. If I'd have not given who I gave custody to, she would have been put into the system. I might have never seen her, which is the reality today for so many, millions of people. Let's be clear. So we can't talk about the cycles and how and what happens with children and the bonds and the relationships that have been torn apart, and we continue to say, well, you shouldn't have done the crime, you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done it. Well, come on, come tell me something else. Come tell me how now we can do something to stop this. Come to us with some solutions instead of always coming to us with incarceration, family separations, all these things that are so violent and so abusive and continue to perpetuate the harm that has been caused. And then want to point fingers and blame, well, you should not know. You have set us up to fail. You have set us up to fail. And we are fighting so hard to not allow that to happen for any of us. Any of us. And those of us are not seeing color, we're not seeing religion, we're not seeing culture, we're not seeing language, we're not seeing love, the who you love or want to love, we're not seeing that. We're just seeing that it's wrong and we have to do something about it. That's why we do this work.
What you were saying about generational trauma and us being set up to fail is why, as part of our vision, we want a society that takes accountability for the harm that it has inflicted, right? And recognizes that real justice is healing, because the harm is long, it is deep, it is historical, and it is a cycle that continues to persist until we interrupt and disrupt the system as it is. Yeah. And there's a scholar, and I can't remember his name, but he was writing in the 70s about the criminal justice system and really challenging the idea of prisons being rehabilitative. And he said, look at this system, basically. There's nothing about this system that says rehabilitation or healing or change. We wouldn't be incarcerating folks for life sentences if our intention was to transform and to change and to disrupt these cycles of violence, right? Like it is actually baked in and built into the system to set us up to continue these cycles.
I would like to give that credit to our impacted brothers and sisters, actually, because yeah. So you might be talking about Brian Stevenson, or you might.
Oh no, this is many, many years ago. It's like, it's from like an author from the 70s who is writing, but yeah, I think you're 100%.
I know who you're talking about. So yeah, I want to say that because I want to give credit, which we don't often do, which I want to start putting out there in the universe, into the world, to the people who lived it, who are the experts, who people like to, which is fine, but like to take credit for coming up with some things that, no, you didn't. You couldn't possibly come up with a solution or understanding to something if you haven't lived it, right? People that we know the best, and so we can all work together here, but we know oftentimes the most effective substance abuse counselor is one that has struggled with substance use themselves. We know the most effective trauma therapists, oftentimes, very oftentimes, a person that has also survived some trauma themselves, because they know the walk, the talk, and the whole dynamics of that. So we can work together in this. But I just want to say this because there are many, and some that we might not even know on this Zoom tonight, who have been impacted by the system. And I just want to give you credit for your experience, your expertise, what you give to this world, what you bring to this world, and what you have the capacity to do and to change in this world, because it's not oftentimes recognized or acknowledged. And I want to start doing that. And the reason why I want to start doing that is because that will start a change as well.
I thank you.
Yeah.
No, I thank you for that. I think it is incredibly important. And one of my questions for you, because it is so important, was going to be like, how do we continue to center and uplift the expertise of system impacted folks and make sure that they are front and center and holding the leadership of this advocacy work that we're doing? I think, folks, it is, it's often when you talk about criminal justice reform, one of the first people's name you hear these days is Kim Kardashian, right? And I just took a deep breath, right? But the folks who are doing this work are you, and in your book, I mean, I think that's the other thing that's so incredible, is so much advocacy in the New York State was led by and the women at Bedford Hills. You guys were doing it, right? And those aren't the names that come to people's minds right away. And those should be the names. And so it is incredibly important for us to continue to make sure that the people we're talking about as the change makers in this space, the people who are leading the activism and organizing, are the women and men who are directly impacted, and the children who are directly impacted.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I have to say this though to that, Sydney. It's, we can work together.
Mm-hmm.
And the village, right, means those that have walked the walk and those that have not, just heard about it and want to help. So we can all come together and do the work together, right? So, but harm continues. Harm continues when those that have not had that lived experience not really get it, can't tell you the feel, the smell, the taste, the texture, any of that stuff, want to say that they do. And want you to look to them for, I'm not going to go to a person that makes ice knows how to make ice well, to fix my plumbing. Now, I might ask you some questions about water and all this other stuff and, you know, other little things, but I'm not going to ask you to come fix my plumbing when you're good at making ice. But we can do it together.
Well, Donna, we have only a few more minutes, so I want to just open it up to folks in the audience if you have any questions for Donna. We have a lot of folks who are singing your praise and really appreciating everything that you've shared with us today. I mean, I have more questions, folks. I will take up the time, but I do want to give people an opportunity too. We have Azure who said, I am grateful for this time and am eager to jump into the book.
Yeah. Thank you.
So,
there was something in the Q&A because I just clicked on it. And that Janae?
Oh yeah, Janae.
I think, yeah, there is, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that, and thank you. I'm humbled by what she said, or he said, I'm sorry. Do not want to take that out of, you know, in context. So the redemptive, or maybe lack of a better word, given the redemptive, or maybe for lack of a better word, experiences you've had in prison, how do you see the role of prisons in society today? I really don't see the role of prisons. Let's be clear, with all the rhetoric about public safety, with all that you hear about public safety, we have more prisons and we have incarcerated more people than the entire rest of the world combined in this one little country here. And we're still talking about what? Public safety. And we're going to continue talking about public safety. Why? Because we have not addressed the root causes. People are hungry. When you are hungry and your stomach says you must fill it, if you have to steal to put a piece of bread or some water in your stomach, you're going to do that. If you have children or you have people that you care about and you have no way to take care of them, you are going to do what you need to do, what you think is the only thing that you can do because you don't have any other options to fulfill that. So we cannot talk about and continue to think that this public safety narrative is the response to it is incarceration or detention or any criminalization. It's not. People are running from their own countries based on the same thing. They're running from their own, and we're targeting them. We're like, don't come here. But we cause more harm than not, right? So we have to address the root causes. We really do. So prisons are not the response. Do people need time out? Yes. Well, how do you treat people when you give them that time out? Do you perpetuate violence and harm and trauma? We call people monsters and we label them quickly, and then we throw them away, and then we abuse them and harm them and violate them in worse ways. And then they're released. And then we're like, oh, we want to talk about public safety. Well, who created the monster? Who created the monster? The other part of your question, or more specifically, how do you relate to movements that seek to abolish the prison industrial complex? I think I responded to that. I'm an abolitionist at heart, but I am realistic enough with myself and with my people to know that it's incremental. In the words of Harriet Tubman, I could have freed more people. I could have freed more people if only they knew they were slaves, enslaved, because we were not born slaves. So. We're enslaved. So we don't need prison to respond to the harms that people continue to perpetuate and force on people. We need it stopped, prevented. We need kids to go to bed full. We need kids to know that they wake up and go to school tomorrow and have a decent, well-rounded education like everybody else. We need people not to be homeless. We have more homeless people in this country than anywhere else in this world. Believe me when I tell you, I've been around. So don't keep saying that America's this, America's that. Absolutely, we can be the best. We can. We can be those beacons of light. But light doesn't lead you to darkness. And prison is only darkness. I hope I answered your question, Janae.
I think you definitely answered her question, and I appreciate everything that you have shared with us tonight. Donna, you are amazing. I feel just so honored to have been able to be in conversation with you this evening and to learn from you this evening. And I just want to thank you for all of the work that you do. And I would love for us, you and NBWJI, a little piece of light in NBWJI, to work together in the future, because the work that you are doing is just so incredible and so important. And, you know, everyone is loving what you have shared with us in the chat. It is 8:01, everyone, and I want to respect your evening. So I just want to say thank you, Donna. You are truly a beacon of light and just an inspiration, and just thank you so much. Nancy says she is the light, which I agree with. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us for our second book club conversation, this time with the amazing Donna Hylton. We have not chosen our next book, but we will let you know as soon as we do, so please stay tuned. And we are also taking book recommendations. So if there's a book by a Black woman that really highlights the experience of incarceration and criminalization and the punishment of Black women and girls that you think we should be reading and talking about, let us know. You can reach us on our social, or even connect with us on our email, or on our internet. I'm sorry. Contact us, website. Sorry, guys. But I thank you guys so much. And Donna, thank you so much for your time. It's just been such an honor.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I look forward to our partnership.
Yeah, we'll go for a walk one day soon.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you.
Right. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Love and light.